What's up, everybody? It's Bear with BearIndependent.com. We are grilling some burgers on the back porch, and while we're doing that, we're going to be talking about security in our ongoing series, Back to Basics. This is probably going to be part one of a multi-part series. Now, when I say the word security, most people think pew, 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 and that's cool. I love pew-pews. However, before we get wrapped around the axles on pews and what kind of pews and how many freedom pew seeds do I need for the blah 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 blah, the first thing I want to talk about is physical security. And to start with talking about physical security, we have to talk about, drum roll please, population density. Now, I know that there are many new people here, and I also know that there are many people who have been here forever and a day. And so for those who have been here a long time, I appreciate you deeply, and perhaps use this as an opportunity to refresh your memory and or to be convicted to continue to do the things. For those that are new, what I mean by population density is how many people are in the area, like really, like per square mile, that you currently occupy, or where you intend to occupy when you bug out at the end of the world, man, or whatever. Yeah, hear that sizzling? Tremendous, believe it. So, population density matters. You don't want to be in a place that has so many people that when things go bad, you're overwhelmed by the resident populace, and that reduces your ability to think, act, maneuver, execute, okay? So when there's lots of people around, it's more difficult for you to think, act, react, maneuver, okay? Conversely, when there's nobody around, out in the middle of nowhere, there's nobody to form teams with, there's nobody to plug into. It's very hard to form a group when you are a party of one, okay? So I have said before that I like, for population density, about 10 people per square mile, up to maybe 50. Many people have emailed and said, Bear, what about 72? Cool. That's way better than 1,000 or 10,000 people per square mile. So the thing to understand here is that people are the best thing and the worst thing about all of the situations we're trying to deal with here. So when you're in a very crowded place, typically speaking, cities, suburbs, you're in an area that consumes resources, not that produces resources. What that means is, with limited resources, there are more people that are competing for those resources. There's a higher demand on those resources. And as you may have noticed, about March of 2020, it was kind of difficult, say, to purchase, I wanted to use a bad word, toilet tissue, butt wipe. It didn't matter how much money you had. If you were willing to pay $1,000 per roll of toilet paper, you couldn't, because it didn't exist, because there were a vast quantity of persons competing for the same limited resource. That's what I mean by population density. And so when you're in a high population area, those areas, again, consume resources. They don't produce resources. You want to say hi to the people? My lovely talented is here. Hami of the Hami Biscuits channel. Also of the famous live stream Back Porch Bitches.
I know, we have a logo.
Yeah, yay.
I know.
You're getting, this is for YouTube, so.
Awesome.
Yeah. I love you. I'll see you in a moment.
Okay.
There's dinner in the oven. Leftovers from last night.
Bo and Renee are bringing pizza.
Okay, I'm not eating pizza. I'm eating this.
I got you wings.
Well, I love you very much. You're the best. Thank you. So getting back to population density. These high population areas consume resources. They don't produce resources. And so when you have a large quantity of people all competing over limited resources, that's going to cause strain. when there's strain on the system, I'll give you an example. Not that long ago, there was a hurricane that hit Houston, Texas. When that hurricane hit, there was rumor in North Texas, in the Dallas area, of there being a fuel shortage. Mind you, there was not actually a fuel shortage. What there was the rumor of a fuel shortage. That rumor of a fuel shortage created an artificial demand on fuel. People ran to the pumps to go get fuel, and they themselves then created the very shortage that they were worried about in the first place. Toilet paper, we've already used as an example. Food scarcity, we see this coming all the time. So the first is resources. And remember, whatever you think is coming next in 2020, 2021, and beyond, war, and if we're going to use that phrase, perhaps conflict, is at its most basic level a game of resources. Okay, it's a competition for resources. So, in high population density areas, you have the consumption of resources which are limited with high demand. In low population density areas, what's up, bro? Whatever works for you. Gray truck? Yeah. Hey, your Jeep's here, right? You can leave the gray truck here, if that works for you. The what? Yeah, I didn't see it. Okay. Okay. Copy that. Hashtag community. Do you even, bro? Getting back to low population density areas, you want to have a high enough population in the low population areas that you can have these exchanges that I'm having right now with people. So that you can form groups, have meaningful relationships with one another, so that if the world gets bad, if you have to put your backs up against one another, you can. You have people. So you don't want such a low density area that you can't find anybody to do that with. Low population density areas tend to produce resources, especially from an agricultural standpoint. These tend to be the areas where food comes from. Food is incredibly important. An army marches on its what? Its stomach. That's exactly right. So moving on from there, not just food, but in many cases, manufacturing is in low population density areas or lower population density areas, because people tend to not want the factories that make Buicks in their backyard, right? Oil and gas, predominantly low population density areas. So the trick here is that you want to have a high enough population density that you can form meaningful relationships with people, but also that you can find work, right? Because 1 Timothy 5 verse 8, he who does not work has denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. We don't want to be worse than infidels. That's bad news. So, low population density areas, there's land. That land is affordable. That affordable land allows you to engage in agriculture. What does that have to do with security? Well, food is power. Food will be, and has been in the past, weaponized against people who are outside of the political norms of the day. We'll just use that phrase, okay? The people that are dissenters oftentimes have food weaponized against them, because it's very hard to fight the man when there's no food in your belly, which is why we are big on agriculture here, not just to consume resources, but to produce resources against rural areas. Get off of my face, fly, I will fight you. So security is in large part physical security is in large part relative to population density. It is much easier, believe it or not, for me to control a square mile out here than it is for me to control one office building, or one apartment building, or even one development, one gated community. We have better lines of sight around here. We also have context with one another so that when it's time to do the things, it's not the first time we've laid eyes on each other in the last, however many days, or months or years. We have that context with one another that, hey man, we're already living life together as neighbors, as community now, so that I don't have to beg you to please come to my aid. It's a foregone conclusion. Just as it's a foregone conclusion that if you need me and you need my help, I'll be there. Because that's how things get done in the country. Now, population density, people, physical security out here in the country. It's also this is a much more conducive environment to say training with your tools. We have an area here on property to train with our tools rather than having to get in the car or the truck and go and drive to a place and pay somebody else money to use their facilities. We just built our own because we can, because we're out in the country. There's no zoning, there's no permitting. You just do what you want to do. In fact, I put up a wind turbine one time in rural Oklahoma, and a one-off, and I went into the town hall / police station / fire department / water department and said, hey, who do I see about getting a permit to build a wind turbine around here? And the chief of police / director of the volunteer fire program / mayor said, permit? What do you need a permit for? Hell, just build it. I said, can I get that in writing? To which he replied, he took a piece of paper and wrote, hell, just build it, and signed his name on the bottom of it. Things are a little bit different out here. And while it makes it difficult to get a high quality mani-pedi around here, it does not make it difficult to live a life that is full of fulfillment and freedom. And so if we're going to talk about security, we have to acknowledge that what we're really talking about is security from people behaving badly. And because there's a lower population density out here, there's fewer people to behave badly. There's also more opportunity for context to form meaningful relationships out here than there are in the cities and the suburbs. That being said, please, city and suburb people, hang in there. This portion is for you. I realize that not everybody can live out here in the middle of nowhere. So what can you do where you are at? Please start getting engaged with the people that you have. Now, it is easier for me to hold a square mile than it is for you to hold an apartment building, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't necessarily have plans to hold the apartment building if you need to. It does not mean that you should not be stockpiling physical goods, food, water, sanitation, commo, tools, and the required maintenance and consumables for tools, so that if bad guys rear their ugly faces where you are, you have a say in the matter. It's not that we're looking for a fight, but if somebody else decides we're in a fight, we need to be able to respond in like kind. I hope you're picking up what I'm putting down here. So if you find yourself in a place that has a less than ideal population density, that does not mean that you don't start where you were at. I did. I was in North Texas when I got real serious about preparedness, and as a result, ended up forming a group that had several dozen people in it. In hindsight, it was not near as effective a group as what I have now here, but it was still an effective group. And it probably could have more so have been had I poured even more of myself into it. But I had always felt a calling for me to come out here and do this. And praise the Father, here we are doing this. But where you are, do the things where you are. And you may think, well, why am I going to do them here when I'm leaving? 2 reasons. First, you get the practice of doing it there. You get to learn to interact with people there, put food in buckets there, train with your tools there, practice your commo there, learn your TCCC and your combat medicine there. Start planting a backyard garden there, right? Tomatoes on the patio there. Start learning how to do the things there. And the next is you have no idea the effect that you're having on the people who are there if you decide to go elsewhere. You may inspire and educate and edify the people who are there, that if you leave, you're still creating leaders and leadership positions where you are, that those people are better prepared than they would have been if you hadn't done the things in the first place. So thank you for being along for the ride. I appreciate you bearing with me. Physical security starts with population density, because we have to acknowledge that the thing that we are securing is our persons away from other dangerous persons. So please let me know down in the comments. I'm very interested. Where do you live? City, suburbs, edge of town, rural, or middle of nowhere? Where do you live down in the comments? And if you would, I would greatly appreciate it if you would like, subscribe, and share if you're new here. Especially share this out to new people. And as always, shout out to the patrons. We would not and could not do this without you. And if you'd like to participate in Patreon, you can always click the baby bear up here. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. Shalom.